Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the ARTTI R1 and the Aoshida E20. I decided to do this review together because I am almost positive that both of these IEMs are a product of LITZ. I mean, the casing, the font used, everything is very similar. It's impossible if this isn't made by LITZ. I just won't believe it. Anyway, let's just get into this and then talk with a little bit more detail about what matters, which is sound. I'll start here with the Aoshida, the E20. Okay, box, simple, nothing special, classy, but nothing over the top, no crazy waifus. It's got the specs here on the back as we expected. The graph and the graph that I measured basically correspond to the reality. It's got a dual dynamic drivers, one 10mm and one 8mm. There we go. The 10mm is a beryllium coated driver and the 8mm is a DLC. And the tuning that they've basically implemented is the type of tuning like we have seen in the variation, that tucked style of bass in the variations, in the PENON dome, in the Moonlight Ultra, in the Chopin binary, in the Rhapsody, the CCA Rhapsody. But obviously, it's just got one setting, and that's it. Inside the box, very simple as again, nothing too over the top. The IEMs came over there, and inside there, the usual paperwork, the case, and inside the case, basically, it brings everything, the IEM, the cable, and everything. So let me just get this out of the way here and show it to you. So, Aoshida, here we go. So that's the case. Okay, generic case, just with a little bit of a branding there. And then it brings these black style tips, which are not bad. They've got a good consistency to them. I'm not using them though because with the KB 07s I got better results. And then the IEMs, you can get this in 3.5 and 4.4, by the way. The cable is not a bad cable. It's fine. It doesn't offend me. And I mean, this the selling price for this IEM is anywhere depending on the vendor. I've seen it from around $60 to $80. Okay, it's got a nicely built shell. It's got a good ergonomics. It fits very nicely in my ear. I'm actually able to actually put put it nice and deep inside my ear. So I always prefer that, so that I can do away with any unwanted resonances. Nice. The whole thing is actually, well, no, not really the whole thing. Sorry, I was gonna make them. This is resin. The back is metal, exactly. And it just looks very smart, very understated. The other color that it's available is like a silver color. I don't know. I've actually got the other one also coming. I just want to check if the QC is decent. But as for this one, it measured perfectly from left to right channel, no issues. So no imbalances. The graph, like I said, measured very similar to the graph that they themselves give. It has a tuck which basically goes flat by just over 100 hertz, so very early. And then the rest, the mids, the upper mids and treble, very much are reminiscent of what we get, for example, in the Rhapsody. The same sort, actually. What that basically means then is that the sound is very pronounced, the distinction between the bass and the rest of the frequencies, as there's a little bit of mid-bass energy there that's lost. In some songs you won't notice it as much, but in other songs you will notice that there's a certain amount of thinness. But overall, the sound is nice. But anyway, let me not get too far into that. I'll talk to it in more detail just now. As for the case of the ARTTI R1, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing. Trust me. Okay, some paperwork again inside there. The case, which I'll show to you now. As for the setup, it's slightly different. Okay, again, here's the specs. They talk about it being 3 dynamic drivers, one 8mm, which is titanium, and then beryllium, and then two 6mm titanium drivers. The graph is also more or less the same as I got with my rig, with my measurement. So this has got 3 dynamic drivers, 2 6s and an 8, while the Aoshida has got 2 dynamic drivers, a 10 and an 8. As for the case, again, similar, a little bit more pronounced here, the logo, okay, the branding. It brings these lecture tips, which I really like. I really enjoy them, and I use them quite often. I actually was using them for quite a while on the R1, and just yesterday, I believe, I actually tried the wide bores, and the wide bores kind of helped me just get a little bit more of a stage, of a sensation of air. One thing I actually want to call your attention to is actually an interesting little detail here, which is, I hope I can show you this nicely. Let me see if I can maybe zoom it in. There we go. See how the filter it's placed in a concave manner. The mesh, okay, it's placed in a concave manner. I don't know why they did that, but I actually found this quite interesting. All right, it's not flat or anything. It's placed in a concave manner. Again, once more, the build is perfect. This one, yes, is all metal, and I apologize earlier on having said that the Aoshida was also all metal, but it's just so many things that sometimes we just make mistakes. All metal, as you can see. Let me just unzoom this. There we go. So all metal faceplate. Build quality is perfect, like I said, fits beautifully. In terms of the fit, there's no issues either with the one or with the other. There are no problems there. They fit very nicely. They stay secure in my ear. Like I said, I preferred both tips on the R1, but these wide bores from BGVP just gave me a little bit more of a sensation of air, and that's why I used them. Let's get into the sound then. Well, they have 2 totally different tunings. Okay, this has got that style of tucked bass, and then with a nice pin again with that kind of Harman roll off and so on. So very similar to what we have here on the Rhapsody. The most similar would probably be if I opt for the Rhapsody all in the first position, the switches all up. That will probably be the most similar here. While the R1 is more of a gliding bass, very full in the mid bass, more of a gliding bass, and then with a nicely executed as well mids, upper mids, and treble. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that part of the spectrum. The only thing I would perhaps say is that the treble extension on upper mid and treble extension here are not as prominent as on the Aoshida, the E20. The E20 has got just a little bit more. Again, that is also very noticeable because of the fact that it doesn't have the same mid bass as the R1. So by not having the same mid bass, then the upper frequencies do sound more open, more detailed. And that was the reason why I basically opted for giving the wide bore tips a go. I've got here the ARTTI E10, their single dynamic, single planar, my apologies, and I've got here the Rhapsody from CCA. Why did I select these two? Well, first of all, because the Rhapsody is also dual dynamic drivers, 2 8s in that particular case, and then 4 BA. So it kind of makes sense to compare it with these ones, since I did compare it and I did review it now recently, and I compared it to much more expensive IEMs. So why not compare it to IEMs which are more priced along the lines of this? I mean, this, like I said, anywhere between 60 and 80, and this is about $80 to $90 on AliExpress. And the ARTTI T10 about the same price as the R1. I'm going to get this comparison here out of the way first, because the only reason why I actually placed here this one was because there was some requests of people asking me, how would they sounded, were they similar, what made more sense. Well, straight away, let me just say this. This fits nicer, and it's going to fit nice in the majority of people as opposed to that. So on that premise alone, I would say this is the better choice. The T10, the shape is going to be a little bit of a hit and miss, okay? That's the first thing. And then the quality of the finish is just not it just doesn't look the part, while the R1 does look the part. The R1 looks very, very nice. This just looks cheap, you know. Sound wise, the biggest difference that you will notice between the two of them is that this doesn't have the mid bass of the R1. Although not having the mid bass, it then does allow the sub bass to shine a little bit more, and it does actually allow the mids and upper mids, the upper mids and treble to also have a little bit more detail in that sensation of space, very typical of planar, but in this particular case not showcased to its maximum extent, because this the T10 is part of that tuning style of planars, which are trying to emulate a little bit more of that DD-like feeling. So do away with that excessive energy that sometimes we get in planars, and that planar timbre or tonality. So there's more mid bass here than here. So this would be a better choice if I was going to listen to something like rock or something along those lines. That would definitely. But then that's counteracted, like I said, by this one being slightly more detailed up top and having that sensation of space being more present than on the R1. Which is the better one? Honestly, there's not a better one. They both complement each other. That's my honest opinion. Both of them make sense in my opinion, you know, in the way I look at it. They both have their pluses and negatives, which I just mentioned. Sonically, the bass in either one is very well executed, obviously with a little bit more thump here. The mids as well, very equal. There's not much difference in the mids, and then the treble, slightly more extension here on the treble than on the R1. Okay. In terms of technicalities, the T10 does edge out slightly the R1. The T10 does have a bigger sensation of space, of air, of soundstage. Imaging is very equal between the two of them. Little bit extra more detail retrieval here, and a little bit extra more resolution here as compared to the R1. In terms of the timbre and tonality, they both are very good, but I think the R1 takes that one there. So technically, you know, they're very evenly matched. Maybe the T10 just edging out ever so slightly the R1. Sonically, I've already given the differences between them. So I would say both IEMs are IEMs that complement each other. If you have this one, eventually I think it makes sense to get this one. And if you have this one, eventually it makes sense to get this one. The reality is this: either one of them, for what they are in terms of being a 3D dynamic driver setup here and a planar here, they both are very well priced. They both are very competitively priced. Okay, so as compared now to the Rhapsody, how do I rate the R1? If the Rhapsody didn't have the versatility of the switches that allow it to, you know, adjust its sound and to not only us but to what we all preferring, then I would say that they would basically be very evenly matched. There's more detail here, so there's more treble extension here, there's more upper mids and treble extension, especially treble here, than on the R1, and that straight away makes as well the Rhapsody be the better choice, because you get then better detail retrieval, you get a slightly better imaging, slightly better soundstage. At least, you know, you get more that feeling of soundstage. So technically, this in that aspect is better than the R1. Only the R1 surpasses the Rhapsody in terms of the timbre and the tonality. In terms of the timbre and the tonality, I will give that to the R1. It just has a very nice timbre. This here, to a certain extent, and I actually could have compared it to the serial, but I thought, no, I'm not going to complicate this and make another mega review of 50 minutes. I'm going to try and keep this one nice and short. This actually reminds me very much of the serial, of the PENON serial. So you could kind of almost say that this is like a mini serial. Not technically the most amazing IEM, no, okay, it does what it's supposed to do decently well, but very satisfying in terms of its musicality. And in that aspect, yes, I think that perhaps even outdoes the Rhapsody. Although the Rhapsody is a very musical IEM, unquestionably, but in the setting that they both are more or less equal, this has got that little extra more feeling of musicality, of that engagement, just a little extra over the Rhapsody. Overall, like I said, this is $50. This is about 90. You could argue that they are both as well very competitively priced, or very, because yes, this does bring a nicer cable, this does bring a case which this doesn't have. So if you start factoring in those things, or if you maybe subtract those things from the equation, you will end up seeing that in the actual core, the IEM itself, basically costs the same thing. So yeah, there isn't really a winner here. The winner in this situation, I think, is a winner that's basically based on the value. Okay, that's it. Sonically, they kind of also trade blows very much, like I said, but this does offer that extra versatility of you adjusting the sound more. So this does then win because of that, not because sonically in the one setting that that I compared it with here, it is better. No, it's not better. It's very much trading blows. So that's basically the R1 out of the way. As for the Aoshida, the E20, the Aoshida E20's got like I mentioned, a different style of tuning. It's more detailed up top in the mids and in the upper mids and treble than the R1. Very much more detailed. I mean, it's noticeable. And that's actually quite interesting, because you got two 6mm titanium drivers here, you got a single 8 here. I would think that would be more detailed, but this is more detailed. It's got, especially the treble, it's got a little bit more detail there. The bass, in terms of the bass, it's not really wrong, because it was tuned to be that tuck style bass with a very early tuck, which does away with the mid bass. And what that basically means is that this then is more engaging, more satisfying. This will sound comparatively thinner. This will sound a little bit more lacking, okay? And it's noticeable on male vocals. On female vocals, not so much. Again, it's difficult for me to stand here and sit rather, and say that one is a winner, one is because they are complements to each other. That's the truth. The reality is that they are complements to each other. Just on the E20 by itself, in terms of the sound of the E20, like I mentioned before, the bass has got that style, that tuck style. The mids are very well executed, in the upper mids and the treble as well, very much along the lines of what you get on the Rhapsody in the all switches up position. Okay, very equal. Again, if I have to compare those two settings with each other, it's very close, but ultimately the Rhapsody wins. So in this situation, the Rhapsody here does win the Aoshida, the E20, because it has more mid bass to complement the songs better, and to, at least the ones that I listen to, and then make them sound more realistic. Okay, so Rhapsody better than this one. Rhapsody about the same as the R1. Price wise, again, like I mentioned, this is about, you can get this for about $60. So nice cable, case, they're the same thing. Honestly, guys, they're the same thing. This is 50, this is 60. It's which one you would prefer ultimately. If you're not going to play around with the switches, then I would say, okay, fine, go for that. And as well, if you're not a fan of too much bass, or if you like that tucked bass style, fine, I would say go for this one. But the truth, and like I mentioned in the Rhapsody's review, is that this is definitely going to be causing a lot of troubles, because the versatility they've offered with the switches actually doing their job in keeping all the tunings that they are capable of giving us very correct sounding, and very engaging, very musical, and then costing what it costs, it makes it it makes it a proposition that is very difficult to say no to. That's the truth. I'm not gonna say no, this now is better because it's got a nicer build and the shell is, no, that's not what matters. We want to know is, in terms of sound, which is the one that will give us more value for the money. That's it. And however much it pains me to say, that's the same situation with the R1. Value for money in terms of sound, this is a better IEM. Although sonically, when I compare them both, like I mentioned, in that particular setting, that they are more similar to each other, I would say that this is capable of holding its own very well. And like I said, in certain instances, I even preferred more this because it's got more that sensation of that, or that old school vibe sound going for it. I think that's probably the best analogy that I can make. This has got very much that old school vibe which we get, for example, on the PENON serial, while this one doesn't. It's got a more modern kind of sound, but very well executed. Okay, this is like 70s sound. This is like a 90s sound. And that's it. Oh, I was forgetting. Technically, these two, they come out very equal to each other. Very equal. Soundstage, imaging, detailed retrieval, very equal. Timbre and tonality is better here than here, only because of the fact that this is a little bit lacking in the bass. It's actually a pity. I like the fact that they've tucked it in like they've done, but they should have tucked it in a little bit later, and it would have changed completely the dynamics of the Aoshida. The Aoshida would have been a completely different beast. Anyway, guys, I hope I was able to kind of position both the Aoshida and the R1, so the E20 and the R1 well, with not only with regards to each other, but regards to the Rhapsody, and also kind of answered this question of the R1 versus the T10, which is the better one, which is the worst. All right. Anyway, guys, I'll show you now quickly the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the ARTTI R1 and the Aoshida E20. Okay, this is the graph of the R1 with the stock lecture style tips. Okay, let's not forget this is an 8 and two 6s. So although you think or you see here this monstrous amount of bass, it doesn't sound that way. It sounds thick, yes it does, as you can see that there's a little bit of a bleed here into the mids and so on, but it doesn't sound as thick or as huge in the bass as the graph would lead you to believe. Okay, I then tried the white bore, the BGVP white bore, and what I was able to was change slightly the profile here around the 4-5K area and give a feeling of a little bit more air, a little bit more space. And it was this setting that I actually used the most all the listening was basically done with this tip setup. Okay, so I'm going to leave that over there. Now, compared, like I said, with the graph of the the ARTTI T10, the planar, and I'm going to get the graph here. This is the graph. Okay. You straight away you can see in terms of the mid bass completely different one and the other. But then what happens is, because the R1 has got so much mid bass, okay, which gives it a bit more slam, a little bit more engagement in certain genres, undeniable. It also doesn't let the sub bass shine as much, and on the T10 you get more that feeling of sub bass, that below 100 hertz on one and on the other. It just sounds more sub-bassy on the T10, and that ratio then with regards to the mids, upper mids and treble is also a ratio which pushes sound more towards this end. So there's a lot more detail. Well, a lot more detail is a relative thing, but there's more detail. There's more sensation of space. There's more. There's a better image. There's a better feeling of grandness. Okay, it's not so much a small venue sound, but it's a big venue sound. But let's keep in mind that, having said all of this, the T10 is also this new wave of planar drivers being tuned a little bit like a DD, so it doesn't have as much as it could possibly have if they wanted. But that's the biggest difference. You notice less in the bass on the T10 as compared to the R1, more in the upper mids and treble in the T10 as compared to the R1. Okay, compared to the Aoshida, let me just quickly grab the other Aoshida so I can show it to you. Okay, compared to the Aoshida, there's similarities, but there isn't. The Aoshida will be more detailed in the upper mids and treble, definitely. Will have more that sensation of space, of air, of grandness, but it lacks a lot of mid bass. So and this has to do with the tuck. The tuck, I mean, like by 150, it's flat already. They should have just extended it just a little bit, made it more like around 200 hertz. And if they had made it around 200 hertz, I think that would have been perfect. Okay, it would have been really perfect because it sounds really good. The Aoshida does sound very, very good. I actually EQ'd it to give it a little bit more over here, like I was mentioning, and yes, it makes quite a difference. It makes quite a difference. So this is an IEM that I would say, if you do get it for the sake of wanting something different, something that not everybody's going to have, definitely consider EQing this area here of around 150 hertz. Just give it a little bit of a boost, so that it kind of is able to give it a little bit more mid bass. Okay, and comparing the R1 to the Rhapsody, and I compared it to the setting of the Rhapsody, which is the 1100 setting. Okay, looking at it this way, they look very similar, and the truth is they do sound quite similar. They do have a lot of similarities in their sound. The bass is very similar sounding, unquestionable. The difference is that then, because the Rhapsody has got a little extra energy in the upper mids and the treble, and it's got more that sensation of air, of energy past 10k, it just sounds more open. So like I was saying, if I'm looking for a more organic, more old school type of sound, yes, okay, I'll give that to the R1. The R1 does do that slightly better. It does have a tonality which is more perhaps more, just ever so slightly more engaging. But in terms of being more capable genres, in different genres and so on, the Rhapsody does beat it. Okay, so that's the Rhapsody versus the R1, and the R1 as well versus the T10 and so on. Now, Aoshida. Excuse me. First of all, this is left and right channel. I mean, they are almost identical. I really can't point anything here. The difference that exists here is negligible. You can't even pick up on it. So it's got that very, very sub-bass focused tuck. I mean, across the majority of the mids it's flat, and then very, very progressive pinna gain, peaking 3, and then carries on through it. I mean, this area here, faultless. I cannot fault it in any way. Very, very well executed. Okay, very well executed. Now, what you do notice is that a clear separation between the two extremes of the frequency. Something which very much happened as well with the Truth Here Zero, the original one. You could notice that separation. It wasn't like it's a big thing or big deal, but you could notice. But here you notice that lack of mid-bass impacts male vocals especially, impacts it a little bit, okay? And then makes it sound consequently a little bit thin on occasions. Now, compared then to the IEMs that I selected, well, compared to the R1, I've done that. Compared to the T10 makes no sense, although I can just quickly put the T10 just for the sake of putting the T10 so you guys can see. Where's the 11? Here's the T10. There we go. Compared to the T10 does edge it out because it does have, although not a mid-bass monster, it does have more mid-bass. So the T10 does edge it out, okay? It strikes a better balance, while the E20 has got this slight thinness here, okay? And then compared to the Rhapsody, because that's what you basically want, is I compared it with the Rhapsody in all the settings, all the switches up, okay? Let me just change here. Oh no, you can actually get, no, I'll change the color, make it red so it stands out. As you can see, and as I mentioned, from let's say 250 hertz up, they are basically a spitting image of each other. And it's very noticeable that they actually do sound very equal, okay, very, very equal. You notice what you do notice in terms of the difference is that because it's BAs doing the stop here, the stop end, they've got that typical BA. I'm not even going to say BA timbre because that's not even going to be fair for me to say that. But you notice it's a BA that's doing that. Okay, you notice it while you on the Aoshida, you can feel that it's a DD. Okay, you notice that it's very noticeable. They've selected good drivers, that's unquestionable, but you notice that the treble on one is being done by BAs and the treble on the other is being done by a DD. Where the difference mainly lies is how this balance is struck, and you can feel that there's more mid-bass on the Rhapsody, and that just complements and just makes it a nicer sounding IEM. On top of that, they basically cost the same thing. Let's be realistic, the accessories and so on, but they basically cost the same thing. So unless you tell me that you're not wanting to play around with the switches and so on and so forth, I really honestly don't see much reasoning. While with the R1, I can see the R1 making sense even if you have a Rhapsody. It would make sense because it really is something different. It brings something a little bit, it brings that PENON serial vibe to the table. Here, I can't really justify the Aoshida making sense in its purchase. And if, for example, I even compared the Aoshida, instead of being the all switches up, but I compared it with the 1100, which is the other setting that I also did the majority of my listening when I did the Rhapsody, it even becomes more noticeable, that lack of mid bass. And the funny thing is, even with this added amount of mid bass, the Rhapsody never becomes bloated in the aspect, oh no, it's got so much now that it's messing up the rest. No, it doesn't happen. Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the truth is the Rhapsody is a really well designed IEM. It is. The only thing that you do notice between the Rhapsody, even be it in this setting or be it in the setting where I did most of the comparisons, which was the all switches up, what you do notice between them in terms of the bass is the quality of the bass. And I would actually say that the quality of the bass of the E20 is slightly superior. That's something that you will notice. It's not a huge difference, but you will notice that it's just got something about it. It's just got that little extra. And when I did the EQing, like I was mentioning, that I did just to get a little bit more mid bass, it becomes more evident. And I think one of the reasons for that is it's a 10mm driver, so it's got a little bit extra surface area. So it should be the reason why that bass just sounds a little bit extra more quality. Okay. Anyway, guys, I hope this was enough to position the R1 and the E20. And that's it. Like and subscribe. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me. All right. You take care. Bye. Bye-bye now.